Tonight on America's Hope, we focus on the rule of law as it relates to so many criminal cases going on in our society. What happens if the FBI or law enforcement manipulates the evidence? What do you do then in order to get justice, equal justice under the law? We're going to talk about that tonight with Alan Dershowitz, as well as a former FBI agent, and Larry Elder will stop by to talk to us as well. America's Hope starts right now. Good evening from the NTD Global Headquarters in New York. I'm Kelly Wright, and this is America's Hope. We're glad that you could join us this hour. Thank you for doing so. We're talking about the rule of law tonight. What is it? Well, it helps to preserve the rights of all people in a democratic society, which is what we are. The operative words, of course, being the rights of all people, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful. It's reflected in our Declaration of Independence and in the preamble to our Constitution. So tonight we want to talk about that and how if one scintilla is violated of the rule of law, let's say evidence tampering, or the FBI mishandles a case and bungles a case, or law enforcement, or anything that's untoward in terms of bringing equal justice under the law, well, it's worth re-examining in order to protect everybody. Remember, I said the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful. So tonight we bring to you a discussion about the rule of law from Alan Dershowitz, Larry Elder, and former FBI agent Rick Kiper, all of them discussing a very salacious case, yet equal justice under the law. Let's get started. What happens when the rule of law is violated and people are sentenced to long prison terms, and there's something that takes place within the discovery process after the case and after the sentencing where you find out, oh, well, maybe the FBI botched the case. And in this particular case, we're talking about Keith Raniere. A lot of people who know this story are quite taken with the fact that he was known as a cult leader. This is a case that involves a lot of salacious details. Here to talk about this is Alan Dershowitz, because Alan, I understand that the case seems to be unraveling because of some missteps wrongfully taken by the FBI, and the government is admitting to their wrongdoing, yet not correcting this. Bring light to this subject for us.
We have 7 expert witnesses, including several former FBI agents, who have sworn under oath that somebody tampered with the most important piece of evidence and created a false piece of evidence, created a piece of evidence that allegedly showed that Keith Raniere may have photographed an underage female. But we now know from these experts, if they're telling the truth, and there's no reason to doubt them, that the metadata on the photographs were changed to make the woman appear to be underage when she was in fact above the age of consent, where there'd be no crime. It's perfectly okay to photograph a 19-year-old naked, but not a 15-year-old. And so we are entitled to a hearing to see whether we can demonstrate or whether the government can disprove the claims by 7 experts that there was tampering with the evidence. So far, the judges refused to give us a hearing. The government has not consented to a hearing. What do they have to hide? Why doesn't every American have the right to know whether their government tampered with evidence? And that's why we're fighting and pushing hard to get this evidentiary hearing. This is about Keith Raniere, of course, but it's also about everybody. If the government can fake a piece of evidence against an unpopular defendant, it's not a long jump to have them be able to tamper with evidence against you or against political opponents. Our legal system is really under the microscope now because of what's happening with Trump and the weaponization of the criminal justice system. And the Keith Raniere case is one of the most serious allegations of government misconduct that I've seen in my 60 years practicing, writing, and teaching about criminal law.
Yeah, and you know, Alan, the bottom line is, you said it yourself, this is an unpopular defendant or convicted criminal because he's now serving 120 years in prison. So his unpopularity stems from the salacious details of what's known as child trafficking and human trafficking and everything involving sex crimes. And for many people who are watching this case, some people are questioning why bring this case forward now, because it re-victimizes in some way the victims who have had to endure this. Talk to me about that and why you see the need to bring this case forward.
Well, it's absolutely essential. Without that photograph and the allegedly false date on the photograph, there would not have been a conviction. Indeed, the defendants were going to fight vigorously, but once the photograph came out, and of course the defendants had no idea at the time that the dates were fake, that people pleaded guilty, because you can't win a case if you're being accused of photographing an underage female. But if that piece of evidence had not been introduced, there's a very good chance that Keith Raniere would have been acquitted, because the charges generally involve consenting adults. And we may not like what he allegedly did. We may not like this kind of organization, but that's a big difference between not liking something and putting somebody in jail for over 100 years for it. And when you put somebody in jail for that long a period of time, you have to dot every I, cross every T. You have to be absolutely certain you have it right. As the expression goes, better 10 guilty go free than 1 innocent be wrongly confined. And what we're asking for is simply an evidentiary hearing at which we get to the bottom of it. We get to the truth. Why are people so concerned about the truth? The answer is because they want Keith Raniere in prison whether he's guilty or not. And you can't do that in America. You can only put somebody in prison if he's guilty, based on due process, based on a fair trial. And I can tell you, with 60 years of experience on this, this was not a fair trial. This is not a valid conviction based on the evidence of these 7 experts. And all we want is an evidentiary hearing. It will take a day, 2 days, and we'll get to the bottom of this and we'll know the truth. Why are you hiding from the truth?
Yeah. So take me back through the history of this. What is Keith Raniere, what was he accused of, and what was he found guilty on and sentenced to prison for 120 years?
A range of crimes that would never have resulted in a conviction if not for this photograph. The photograph was the smoking gun. And all we're doing is asking for a new trial without the photograph being introduced. And there are many who believe that without the photograph, the government might not even bring them to trial. But again, you may not like what he's accused of doing, but the point is, did he cross the line into criminality? And in order to establish that, that photograph and the metadata around the photograph has to be authentic. And I've had a lot of cases now over the years where we've been able to prove scientifically that evidence was not valid. We did it in the O.J. Simpson case. We were able to prove that a sock that purportedly had his blood and the blood of a victim, the blood had been poured on the sock by Officer Van Adder, who didn't realize that there was EDTA, a chemical on the test tube, that isn't found in the human body. And we won the case based on being able to demonstrate that the government framed one piece of evidence. And that's what we're trying to do here.
Hi, everybody. I hope you're enjoying this episode so far of America's Hope. If you'd like to see it in its entirety, just click on the link below. Thanks for watching.